Hey there. Welcome to HR Tech Talks. I am Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad to have you here. We've got a great conversation happening over the next 28 minutes or so. We're going to dive into recruiting. We're going to dive into personal touch there, right? When sometimes gets lost in that bigger world of how we find and connect with candidates. So I'm really excited for that conversation with Kathleen from ClearedJobs.net. It's going to be a great conversation. Just a quick reminder to you, if you are a provider in our space and you are serving the community with technology, we're running the HR Tech Awards. You can find that at hrtechawards.org. More detail on that. That experience is open for a few more weeks if you want to dive into that. If you're listening and you are a practitioner, number one, chime in. Let us know where you're listening in from. I know Kathleen and I would be curious to see where you are. I know she's representing the state of Virginia right now, but she's been around the U.S. in the last few years. I'm representing the southeastern U.S. and Alabama. So chime in. Let me know where you're connecting in from. And number two, if you have a company that you're working with that is an HR technology provider for talent, for learning, for HR broadly, or HRIS, any of those things, and you love what you're using, you can actually nominate them. And you can just go to hrtechawards.org/nominate, and you can do that. So let them know. We'll give you the kudos. We'll let them know that they've been nominated. All kinds of fun stuff there. So enough of that. Enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and welcome Kathleen into the conversation. Hey there.
Hey
Welcome.
there. Yeah, welcome. Great to be here.
I am excited to have you here. So we were laughing in our prep a few minutes ago that you and I had done a podcast interview several years ago. It's so far back, it's embarrassing for me to say. Like, I don't remember how far back it was. But it was a fun one, though. It was a fun one. It stretched me. It stretched you a little bit, and so we were glad to kind of come back together in this format, to have a discussion. So I'm glad to have you here.
It's great to be here, and I love the StreamYard platform. It's been fun over the last year, really sort of exploring the different technologies. You know, we all sort of started with one, and many new people came involved, and then StreamYard came around. So I'm excited for this one.
Awesome. Wonderful. So before we dive into some of the conversation, the nuts and bolts kind of stuff today, tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
So, Kathleen Smith, I'm the Chief Outreach Officer for ClearedJobs.net, which is a job board focused in the security cleared community. We work with employers who are facilities cleared employers and who are looking to hire people with security clearances. Part of my job, I've been a marketer most of my life, part of my job is really engaging the community. So, people look at the title marketing and they think, oh, she's just going to be pushing us services. Whereas my philosophy is getting out into the community, finding out how the community works, what their challenges are. And this is something that's really driven me over the last 20 years of being at ClearedJobs.net, is to really go out to the bases, go out to the various different government agencies, going out and talking with folks who are trying to find a job and what are their challenges. So we've set up a variety of programs where we give back to the community, not just, donation drives, but really getting out and doing resume review and career coaching, because we're really fortunate that more than 80% of our staff are veterans and/or military spouses. So we really know how to walk that talk.
That is fun. That's part of like the connection that I had with you originally, all those years ago. Is the last job I had in HR, I was actually working for a government contractor. We hired a bunch of cleared staff. That was one of the hardest things that I had to do, was trying to find that population, trying to connect with them. They have their own unique, flavor of kind of work they do, things like that. Sometimes it's all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything from pilots to cybersecurity to software engineers. We had a ton of different things we hired for. And that was the challenge that I had, was trying to connect with that audience. So you serve the employer community, right? Helping them find candidates. You serve these candidates with resources, with tools, with education, maybe some inspiration, right? There is an opportunity for them out there. Talk about this piece of what you do as a job board, because when people hear that, sometimes they're like, oh, everybody knows what that is. Everybody's used one. But I'm kind of curious, tell us something that might surprise us, or something that's unique about working for a company that's a job board, because I think there's probably some things that we don't know as a general public.
Well, fascinatingly enough, is that job boards have been around since 1994. And so when you think about them as a technology, a lot of people think they're sort of outdated. And for job boards to stay in business, we all have to update our technology. So we are keeping up with, the technology. We are not necessarily a silver bullet. And as you know, Ben, a lot of people always just want that silver bullet. They want something that will just provide those candidates into their inbox and not help facilitate sort of the recruiting experience. So, one thing that I like to say about job boards in general is looking at how they engage their talent. How do they engage in outreach to the people that you're trying to look for? And that is one thing that I would always say if someone is vetting a new job board is to really ask, how are they reaching out to the candidates that you want to hire for? Because some people believe if you build it, they will come, where there are so many different tools and technologies out there, just like recruiters and HR professionals are confused, so are the candidates. So job boards are one part. I'm not going to be, someone who says they are the only thing for you out there. They are one part of your overall strategy. And being able to at least lay down how you're going to go after the talent that you're going to go for in the upcoming year. Because I think a lot of people don't realize they need to lay out a complete strategy. This is, the thinking part of the recruiting. The human part is really thinking out the strategy. It's you don't throw a bunch of tools at your recruiting strategy. You really look at, okay, in my space, what kind of government contracts are coming? Am I actually having that conversation with my business development people and seeing what kind of business they're going after? So that networking component of working with those on your staff, program managers, what are the challenges that they're seeing as far as the candidates that are coming through? But looking at the job board, you can clearly identify how many candidates have this specific skill set, and in my market, the security clearance that you're looking for, and how do you start cultivating a strategy with them? Because people in the security cleared market are not going to respond on, to your first or second, request to them. You have to build that strategy. And if you understand that there's only 3 people who have that one certification and that one clearance that you're looking for, you're going to have to develop a strategy that really has a good candidate experience. You understand what their business about, but you don't know that unless you have the data. And that's one thing that the job board is going to do is provide you the data. It's also important to understand that the job board is only, as I said, one part of your overall strategy. So once you know where the candidates are, once you know how to search for them, it's then developing the candidate strategy. The other part is understanding, how does the candidate think? Because with job boards, job postings and resume, whatever you put in is what you get out. So if you're putting in bad job postings and you're not getting a lot of candidates responding to them, it might not be the candidate's fault. It might be your fault on the way that you're writing that job posting. So we always recommend to our customers to be able to put up 2 different job postings to sort of do a test. Which one is going to get the kind of candidate that you're going to, be interested in cultivating? And it's also getting some experience at saying, if you're really looking for a software engineer, if you're really looking for someone in a particular market and you're not getting that candidate, you might have to change your search strings. You might have to change your strategy. And that's another thing that a job board will able to do is give you a community to be able to try out these different strategies so that you're able to say, okay, this one isn't working. We need to change the strategy. A lot of times people think it's the tool, but it's how you're using the tool.
So I want to touch on 2 of those things you said there, because I think they're really insightful. One, you said the first time you reach out, they may not respond. And that's, again, I think you and I probably laughed about that when we had our last conversation, because I had worked with the company as kind of a consultant, working with them. They were trying to hire for some cybersecurity roles, and they had this issue where no one would respond, or they respond with like a list of ransom demands. Like, these are all the things that I want, and I won't talk to you until you have those things. And it took them by surprise. It took me by surprise, because it had changed a little bit, and I never recruited for this type of roles. And you're saying, like, it takes a little bit to get them to respond. The first thing I thought of was, I have no idea what the stat is, but in advertising, they have to hear your message a certain number of times before they respond or take action.
Mhm.
Whatever, 7, 8, that may be a fake number. I don't know what the number is, but they hear
7.
this certain, okay, there we go. It sounded familiar in my head. They have to hear that a certain number of times before they actually take action. And that reminded me of this. This is the same kind of thing. Don't assume that when you post a job out there, it is that golden nugget that someone's been looking for all their life. It is that drink of water in the desert, like that thing that they've been waiting for that. And suddenly it's there, because that may happen. But I'd say on average, it's not going to happen that way. It's not going to be just some like, oh, blaze of glory. It's going to require you to spend some time, to invest in that personal relationship, to build that brand and that community. And as you were saying a minute ago, really to spend some time investing in that, with time, with effort, with resources, so that your name is known. They understand when they hear your company's name, what kind of things you stand for, what kind of people you hire, right?
It's really so, you really have to reach out. It's sales, it's marketing, it's fundraising, it's 7 times. You just really have to understand that you have to be in front of somebody 7 times with a compelling message before it's actually going to click in their head. So, yes, unless you have a candidate that's looking at 7 different job postings that you really have to have a presence there. And unless you know where they are, you're not going to be able to, reach them, especially if you don't have the multi-million-dollar budget. I mean, if you know that you have 3 or 4 key security cleared positions that you're looking for, and you're going to be continually looking for them over the next 2 years, you should be posting that position and making sure that it's very clear as to what you're looking for and what you're willing to offer. And then anytime you can reach out to a candidate, be very clear with them as to where you found their resume, especially in the security cleared market. You have to say, hi, I'm reaching out to you because you posted your resume on clearedjobs.net. It's the legitimacy, especially in the security cleared market. People want it, people are very, you know, nervous about people reaching out to
Protective,
them,
right?
very protective. So be very clear as to why you're reaching out to them, where you found their resume, and don't just look at their email and shoot them off a message. Really read their resume and really have some key questions that you've invested at least more than that 7 seconds that we all talk about, that you've invested at least 5 or 8 minutes in that resume. Because if that is a candidate that you want to cultivate, you want to start that relationship, and you need to do that research to have that conversation with them. And that is going to be about being forefront with the candidate experience. You want to make sure that they understand you're interested in them, that it's not just a number, that you're really interested in them as a candidate. And you may not have that position for 2 or 3 months, but you need to keep in touch with them. You need to be sending them an email every 6 months. I have some great customers who all they do 1 day a month is they go through the 10 to 15 different candidates that they have been cultivating, and they just check in every 6 months. They just check in. Just wanted to know how you're doing. We still have these positions available. Letting them know that you're interested in cultivating them, not just hitting them with the hot job, urgent fill that we used to always see, but that you're interested in establishing some kind of candidate experience for them. The other way is really making sure that you're very transparent about your hiring process, because a lot of people, job seekers, I can't tell you, I've been doing this for over 20 years. Job seekers still don't understand our recruiting and hiring process. And every single company is different, especially in the government contracting space. We not only have our requirements as a government contractor, we also have the requirements of the customers we serve. So being very transparent, adding that component not only on your website, but also looking at anytime you talk to a candidate, be sure you're forefront with them as to what your process is, and confirm with them that they understand what the process is, because job seeker angst is at an all-time high. I mean, it was bad before the pandemic, but my goodness, just the angst, the YouTube, the memes, everything that's out there. Recruiters, HR managers are just being bashed. So if you don't explain why you're not getting back to somebody, or why you're not following through within a week or 2, you've just ruined the candidate experience. And if they see another job posting of yours or an outreach from you, they're just going to dismiss it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting like a bunch of just insightful recruiting tips and suggestions here in this conversation. One of the things you mentioned a minute ago is spend a little time, look at the resume, send something tailored, not this general, hey, here's my job, because they already know what the job is probably. Right? Don't tell them something vague or something you can link to. Tell them something about them, something you appreciate. And years ago, I'll tell you really quick, an example of that. I was looking for a certain kind of pilot, ran across this person who was a certified hot air balloon instructor pilot. And I'm like, holy moly, that has zero to do with this job, but that is incredibly cool. And so I reached out to him and was like, and was telling him, said, I just saw this. I had to reach out. I don't know if you're interested in this kind of thing or not, but I just had to tell you that is the neatest thing I've seen on a resume. And he kind of sent back a note. It was kind of fun and just friendly. And we had this conversation. And even though he was like, hey, I'm really good where I am right now, but I have someone that is looking right now. And that's the fun of being willing to build some rapport, being willing to take a little time to invest in that, because even if that person, like, hey, I'm actually good, but I know someone else, and they're willing to do that. And over time, as you're talking about some of those customers you're talking about that are building those relationships, after you've done those touch points a couple of times, you can say, hey, by the way, do you know someone else that's looking for this kind of thing? Because this is what we're looking for right now. Even if you've got a database of engineers and you're looking for someone to do something completely unrelated to that, you can still ask them, hey, who's the best X you've ever worked with? And it's amazing how many times we get a response. I think our record was I sent an email to one of our people at our team who had a bunch of military connections. He had just retired out of the military, and he passed that on to his contacts. And when looped back around to us, it had been forwarded 7 different times before we found the person we were looking for, and we hired him on the spot. And again, it's the fun of building those connections. That it seems time consuming. It does take time. It seems like it's hard. It is. It's harder than just sending a template email, but it leads to better results.
So one of the things we're different in the way that we're both a job board and a job fair company. So some companies really like using a job board. Some people like using a job fair. We like it that we can integrate both job fairs and job board into any services. So that's why many of our customers are the Fortune 50 government contractors, but all the way down to the small to medium-sized companies who really need something customized. And about 12 years ago, I would always play sort of, the secret shopper. I would be a secret job seeker at competitors' job fairs, and I would talk to other job seekers and ask, what's going on. And at that time, it was most companies were going to job fairs, and they were only asking to talk to people who had a certain type of clearance, and they even had signs on their tables that said, "Don't even bother coming and talking to us unless you have this high-level clearance." And I really saw that the candidate experience was just non-existent in our community. So we started something that was called the Best Recruiter Program, where job seekers were able to vote at the end of a job fair for the companies that provided the best overall recruiting experience. And it was fascinating because it really gave the job seekers a way to not vent, because, in the 10, 12 years that we've had it, I could say we only had like 3 complaints. Everyone else was able to say, yeah, these people really treated me well. I really appreciate it. I'm not really interested in any of their jobs right now, but I definitely want to keep in touch with them. And it was great because we still do it. We've continued this even in the virtual environment, but just watching the rapport, the change in the community, that people are really understanding that it's about the candidate experience. And we had it so many of the companies, their management, recruiters are never well thought of by senior management, which really drives me nuts. People like, well, yeah, we can get rid of our recruiters and HR departments and start all over again. And we made sure that senior management always knew when a team was voted best recruiter. We do a big news release at the end of the year, a big celebration. People get T-shirts, just really celebrate the time that recruiters were taking to build this rapport. And it's fascinating to watch this just sort of shift. You no longer see those signs at job fairs that say, we're only going to talk to you this way. We had one company who one of our bigger companies who always had that sign in the front, and they would just stand there with their arms over their chest. And I walked up to them and I said, would you mind doing it my way for once? Just let's take the sign down. Let's get you out in front of your table. Let's get you engaging with people. You have to be here for a few hours. Why don't you just talk to everybody? Just just have a conversation. At the end of the event, they were voted one of the best recruiters. They had never been voted best recruiter. They actually found candidates because in our market, people don't advertise on their name badge what clearance they have. They'll always put the one lowest. And they said they had fun. And you definitely want to work with a recruiter who enjoys their job and has fun. And it's great to hear recruiters who say, the reason why I do this is because I want to make a change in somebody's life. And rather than trying to comply with all kinds of regulations, I just get to talk to people. So I've had a lot of fun with that program, and I'm really glad that we still do it.
That is a ton of fun. And I love, like you said earlier, right, the recruiting leaders, the HR practitioners, people that are posting the jobs and having to manage those processes, they get beat up a lot. And because it's not easy. It's not as simple as I'll post this thing and there's one person that applies and oh, look, it's you, and we just pick you. It's not that easy, as much as it might seem like that from the other side of the table. So I want two things I want to make sure we get to before we finish today. Number one, you mentioned split testing earlier. I don't think you used those words, but like posting the two jobs, two versions of the same job with some things tweaked and changed between them to see which one performs better. Talk about the things that you might change if you were going to post two versions of a job and help someone compare those. Would you talk about that a little bit so they can understand? Because the marketing hat that I'm wearing, I get it, but most people have never done that before. So talk about that a little bit, please.
So I wish more people did split testing. It's, as you said, it's something that's been around in marketing for a very long time. One big mistake that we see a lot, especially in the government contracting space, is that they copy and paste the requirements straight out of the RFI or whatever proposal that they were awarded. And yes, there is specific language that you need to have, but be sure you don't have typos and mistakes in it, because I can't tell you how many times I've looked at some job postings and literally all someone did was copy and paste it from the contract award. And it will have all kinds of acronyms in it that have nothing to do with the job description, have everything to do with the government contract. So being a little bit detail oriented. I mean, we talk about candidates not being detail oriented and maybe having typos and stuff. Let's be the same on the job posting side. I think it's also talking a little bit more about the company in human terms rather than PR terms. So, what do your employees do? What do they like to do? Really sort of adding that component, because yes, as I said, in government contract job postings, there's specific language we have to have. It's specific to the government contract. And then there's usually something that's slapped on the end, which is, the EEOC compliance. And then there's something else that's slapped on the end. I mean, we end up having a 4-page job posting,
if we're lucky.
If we're lucky, which doesn't really tell why people like working there. And really sort of using that cultivation, and also sort of including in the job posting, as I said earlier, the hiring process, who you will be talking to, because that is something that a job seeker will really want to know if they're going to apply. Are they going to be talking to the customer? How many hiring managers are they going to talk to? Are they going to be on 10 hours of Zoom calls? So really adding that transparency, I think, to a job posting is something that's going to make a difference, because it's being upfront with what your process is. And a lot of angst out there by job seekers as to how long the process is.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. And then we've got about two or 3 minutes left before I give you a chance to tell us how to connect. So we just had a great question come in. I'm going to actually pop it on the screen so you can see it and respond to it. What about building a talent community? Right. And I think part of what you talked about already is kind of touches on that, how to build that rapport. It's really about building a more connected relationship with people. But any other tips or suggestions on that, I think the audience would really appreciate it.
So I need to clarify when someone talks about talent community, because a lot of times we talk about talent communities and there's something that has structure to them and they're really formal. And that's a challenge because then you are limiting how many referrals and how many sharing of information you can do. So really just having one of your own LinkedIn groups and being sure that you're part of other key LinkedIn groups that really focus on your talent market. Then as far as those is, again, don't just post it, engage, really be willing to invest the time, 1 to 2 years of cultivating people, because you know we have several people on our staff who are veterans who also have recruiting backgrounds, and they're part of the veteran mentor network. And being there, constantly engaging, constantly posting, answering questions, answering the hard to answer questions. You have to be willing to put that kind of investment into a talent community. It's not just like making a smaller fishing pond that you can just throw your lure into and get that candidate. You have to cultivate, you have to engage, you have to answer, you have to be willing to put in the time. And I think that, that's the human element. We can hear about technology that's AI and silver bullets and social media sharing and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's you investing in the time with the candidate.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm glad you touched on it, because that's one of the many things, right? You use silver bullet, and this is the answer. This one thing that you do, and then everything is solved. Unless that one answer is spending a lot of time and effort and sweat and blood
Hmm.
and all that other good stuff, right? Working on building relationships with people, it's not the answer.
No,
That has to be part of it, or it's not going to be a full solution, or it's going to be, you'll get plenty of people that respond that are not who you're looking for, and you're going to continuously be upset about that. So there's lots of gaps there in that. So before we finish up here, take a minute, tell us how we can connect with ClearedJobs, to learn more about what you and the team are up to, and yeah, there you go.
So clearjobs.net, our company name, is our website address. So just go to clearjobs.net and you'll be able to see the jobs that we post, see the job fairs that we have coming up. Also be able to outreach to anyone on our account management team if you're looking for services for your cleared facilities employer. If you're a job seeker, we have a great newsletter. We have a LinkedIn group. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on all social media. And if you're a military spouse or a veteran or transitioning military person, thank you for your service. Just so you know, we have people on this side who have been there before and can definitely help you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your insights.
No problem. I'm so glad we finally did this after years.
It was worth it. It was worth it. It was long awaited and totally worth it. So thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you for just giving some insights, some ideas, some suggestions there, breaking some of the myths around job boards. I love just, again, that's the fun of having you here. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. You too. Stay warm, stay safe, stay dry.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. I hope you got some good ideas, some tips, things like that. It was fun because when we were talking about having Kathleen and the ClearedJobs.net team on, I thought it was fun to talk about, like, we talk about job boards like we know what they are. We talk about them like they're the same thing, cookie cutters, but there's a lot of variation in them. There's a lot of variation in even how the different companies approach and support the job seekers and support the employers out there. So I just wanted you to hear some of those insights and hear that directly from someone who's connected to that every single day. Right? So that was a lot of fun. I appreciate you for joining us. Thank you, and have a good rest of your week. Again, as she said, stay warm, stay safe, stay dry, and I'll catch you next week on another episode of HR Tech Talks.